Today, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the resources that we have in our online PD platform, as well as how we use them in a balanced math block, both in a general education setting and also in an intervention setting. As we get started, love to hear where you're from and your role. You can drop that in the chat. And I also have my colleague, Ashley Marlowe here, who will be monitoring the chat and checking in if you have any questions. So feel free to drop them there. All right, and we'll get started. So to get started, I just wanted to share a really foundational piece of the work that we do here at All Learners Network, which are our high leverage concepts. And as I talk today about our balanced math block and the online resources that we have, these are really foundational because we believe that all kids can learn math and all kids can reach high levels of math. And we have developed the high leverage concepts to create a pathway, a map, a roadmap for kids to get there. These are the key mathematical understandings that students will need to be successful in the following year of school. I'm not going to go into great depth about these in this session, although at the end of our session today, I'm going to share a resource page with you that has some resources, and you'll be able to access these there. These are really important in all that we do, especially if we're thinking about math intervention. These are the things that matter the most. They don't cover every piece of math that we teach, but they do help us get at the core of what will help students be successful and continue forward in a positive trajectory. So I just wanted to put those out there for those who might not be familiar with them yet, in case you hear me referencing them as we go along. So today, I want to talk a little bit about our lesson structure that we recommend for a balanced math block. So this lesson structure is recommended for general classroom instruction. It provides a really great structure for both inclusion and differentiation. Also, this can be a really great way to structure an intervention block. So this isn't just for if you have a general classroom. I worked as an interventionist and a classroom teacher. And I can say that this structure works really well for both of those settings. So we start with a launch, which is a 5 to 10, 15-minute part of your math lesson focused around a number sense routine. This is focused on student discourse and is really a time for all students to be included and feel welcomed into their classroom. This is followed by main lesson, which is the time when students get the bulk of their new learning. This is when they're getting grade level content for all students. We really want to make sure that all students are included in that part. And main lesson is typically focused on problem solving. Next, we use a menu structure, which is when students get their just right learning. So that's when students are able to work on things that really fit their own needs, and it's differentiated by readiness. So what is the math content that they need to work on? We want students to have choice and experience independence, and that also allows the teacher to work with small groups. And we end our balanced math block with closure, which is a time for discussion and reflection, synthesis, and the teacher to have some formative assessment. So in our balanced math block, go through that again, and we're going to engage in some activities, and I'm also going to share some resources that we have in our online platform. So this year we launched a new online platform called All Learners Online, and it includes courses, resources, community spaces, and things for math educators to get all the different things that we need. And our goal here is to empower teachers to meet the needs of all their learners. And we want to honor this tension between the reality of the decision fatigue and everything that's on your plates right now, and also that we really respect your craft as professionals and that you're capable of making great decisions. So our platform has been structured around supporting you throughout your math block. So I'm going to go through each part of our balanced math block and share with you some of the ways that we use our resources to meet our goals for students. And we're going to start with lunch. And again, if you have any questions as I go along, I know this is like a quick session. I wish we could have a lot more interaction and things like that. But please drop them in the chat, and Ashley will either call them out to me or answer them if she can. All right, so we're gonna actually start with a launch. So again, launch, we're using number sense routines to include and engage all students. We're going to try out a launch, and then we're going to look into our All Learners Online launch library and also see how we might select launch tasks using a goal. Okay, so don't type yet, or don't press send yet, but just take a look at this. This is a routine called Which One Doesn't Belong? And in this routine, there are no right or wrong answers. It's just about justifying your thinking. So you see here on the screen 4 different choices. And I want you to think about which one doesn't belong, which one doesn't share an attribute that the other ones all share. Take a moment to think about that. As long as you have some sort of justification to back it up, then that's what's important. There's a way to justify each of the quadrants. Type it in the chat, but don't press send yet. I'll give you like a minute to think. In your classroom, you might be asking students to give some private small signal when they've had enough think time. You'd probably be giving them more think time than we have time for right now. All right, and when I press go, we're all gonna enter our thoughts in the chat at the same time. All right, go ahead. Which one doesn't belong? And why do you think so? So we see D is the only one with Roman numerals. Ooh, B, there's a speaker on that one. I'm just reading a few as they fly by in my chat here. B does not have a circular face. A doesn't because it's in military time. So a routine like this can be really great to just get kids talking and thinking, and it's fun. They have a lot of fun. Kids love arguing. And this routine in particular can be really fun if you have kids who love to debate, because there's always a way that they can find themselves in that situation and try to justify their thinking. And it's always just fun for us to warm up these sessions with doing a little bit of this reasoning thinking ourselves. So in All Learners Online, our online platform, we have a library that's filled with number sense routines, like Which One Doesn't Belong. We've organized them around 4 categories, and I often think about these 4 categories as I'm planning a launch when I'm selecting what type of number sense routine I might want to use. So we have visual images, we have estimation tasks, reasoning tasks, and number strings. And the library is searchable by math content, by context, so you can pull common, day after day, you might do like a series of images that build upon each other so that students can continue to deepen their understanding and thinking with a similar context. We find that launch routines sort of defy grade levels. For example, you can see kind of small here, some of these egg pictures. You could use those in so many different grade levels. Some students might be using counting strategies, some might be using additive or multiplicative strategies. You could even talk about fractions of groups, but we have tagged things by approximate grade level and types of routines. And we also have a variety of formats. So some of them are just images, some of them are slide decks that are animated, and some of them are videos. So in this launch library, we have hundreds of different resources. Now I'm a teacher and I have a goal for either my whole class, or maybe I'm an interventionist and I am working with a small group. Let's say that I wanted my students to practice agreeing and disagreeing respectfully. That might be a goal that you have for your students, right? Or maybe you've been unitizing, working on making groups of 10, and also you've been noticing students need some practice with coin identification. So here's what our launch library could look like in action. You could go into the library and use a search term such as coins or groups of 10 or place value, and you can pull up a task that fits the needs that you know that your students need. So here's another example of a launch task, a same and different task, where students are working on sort of not having black and white thinking, but understanding that these 2 images can both be the same and they can also be different. All right. So our launch library has really been designed to engage students with lots of fun and beautiful and relevant tasks. We're always trying to add to it because we really want launch to help students feel included and like they can relate to what's going on in math class and that everyone has something to say. And for interventionists, this can be a really powerful way to start your math block because it can really warm students up and be a really approachable and friendly way to get kids who might have historically felt excluded from their larger math class or from math in general. It can really open the door to them. All right. So we're going to look a little bit at main lesson now. So in main lesson, we're really thinking, oops, sorry, I went a little blurry here. I'm just going to see if that smooths me out there. There we go. They went soft focus. All right, so in our main lesson, either in our whole group instruction or in our intervention time, this is where the bulk of our new learning is coming. And again, we really believe, we say strongly that all kids need access to grade level instruction when they're with their peer group in their classroom. And part of the way that we do this is by using low floor, high ceiling tasks. And in our main lesson library, we have tasks that can supplement your core program or your core instruction. So we know that schools have their math programs that we use, and we encourage you to use them. Our goal is that we can support how you use how you use your math program. So low floor, high ceiling math tasks. This means that when solving a problem, everyone has an entry point. That's the low floor. Everyone can get into the problem somehow, either by using a counting strategy or by drawing a picture or by using guess and check. There's some way that everyone can find a strategy and find a way into the problem. A low floor, high ceiling task also has that high floor, the high ceiling, which means that everyone has a chance to experience productive struggle. So productive struggle is really, really important for kids to experience mathematical insight. It's really the part that gives them that aha moment. And so we don't want kids to just be sailing through the math tasks. We want them to actually have to grapple a little bit. So this takes a particular type of task. And sometimes in our math programs, we can find those tasks. They exist in there, but more often we have to do a little bit of nudging with the tasks in our math programs to maybe rearrange them or resequence how the problem's is being asked to really make it into a richer task with a higher level of cognitive demand that still allows everyone to enter. So I just want to reiterate that our approach at All Learners Network is not to hand you another like boxed curriculum or program. We are all about empowering you to become a better user of your math program. And again, this is really true for both classroom teachers, special educators, interventionists. We've talked to interventionists who say, I'm required to use this particular intervention program. How does this work for me? We always recommend, especially with intervention, that it should be more tailored to the student, and that a boxed intervention program is not necessarily going to get you there with every kid every time. However, you can use what you have. All of our math programs have things that you can use. And if you're thinking about how you want kids to be able to access the material, then you can, think about how you're going to use what you have. We also want to give you more. So part of what we've done in All Learners Online is to create a library of low floor, high ceiling math tasks that you can supplement your math program with. So maybe you're noticing that your kids need some more of these rich tasks. So let's take a look. Whoops. All right, so this is a newer thing that we've been working on. And we have created a task library. Right now it's in a pilot phase and we just have tasks for grades K through 4, although more are coming in the future. And these tasks are low floor, high ceiling. They have a high cognitive demand. A lot of them have that they're either open-ended or there's multiple solutions. They all include different levels of modeling and justifying your thinking. And just like our launch library, this library is searchable. So let's take a look at what this would look like in action. Okay, so let's say that you have a group of students and you have a learning target for them. I can decompose numbers into parts using place value. So this is a very common target that you might have connected to this second grade Common Core standard, using addition and subtraction within 100 to solve 1 and 2-step word problems. I won't read the whole standard to you. Again, main lesson, we always want to connect it back to that grade level learning. We also think about our high leverage concepts that I talked about at the beginning. So the grade 2 high leverage concept is using place value understanding to add and subtract numbers accurately, flexibly, efficiently, and strategically within 1000. So that target comes from, is very anchored into those two standards and concepts. You also might, when choosing a main lesson task, be thinking just generally about your observations and formative assessment that you have done with your class. So I don't know, I used to teach in a second grade class, and a really consistent error that I would notice when kids were doing make 100, they were adding up to 110, you know, okay, so if I have 37, then they would be adding, okay, well, okay, it's got to be 73. And so you might be noticing those types of things that are coming up in your class. You might notice students could use more practice using part whole problems to solve subtraction. Some students are ready to explore finding combinations of 100 with 3 add-ins. So you might also have some noticings and observations about that high ceiling part. Where do you want students to be able to push ahead a little bit? So here is an example of a task that you might select to fit these goals. So this is a second grade task from our library. Ben made 100 homemade chocolates for his family. His brother and sister snuck in and each ate some. Ben has 84 chocolates left. How many could each of them have eaten? And then use a model to show your thinking. So just take a moment and think about that previous slide where we talked about the importance of low floor, high ceiling tasks, how all students could enter into this problem, and how students might be able to experience that productive struggle. So students could draw a picture if they needed to. They could use concrete manipulatives to model this problem out. There's lots of different ways that students can engage with this. There's also not just one correct answer. In our library, you can get to this problem by searching lots of different things. You can search by context, you can search by the standard. You have lots of different reasons that you might select this task. I just want to pause for a moment in case anyone has any questions, or Ashley, anything in the chat that's come up, or we?
I don't think so. I don't see any questions that have come up yet.
Great. Okay. So let's just take a moment then and think about this problem. So think about some students, think about some real life students, if you've had experience with this grade level, or you can just imagine, how might you imagine students might enter into working with this problem? Just take a moment and think. You can share in the chat if you'd like. What would be, what do you notice about the low floor part of this problem that allows students to enter in?
Katie, is it okay if I read some out loud?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I see that it's a relevant context. And I also see could count on from 84 to 100. There's many possible answers. All students could approach it. Multiple strategies.
Great. Great, thanks everyone. Yeah, so the powerful part of using tasks like this in your main lesson is that it allows all the students to connect with a problem that's very related and relevant to grade level standards, even if they might have some gaps in their previous learning, they can still find a way in. So We are really excited to be developing this library full of tasks and are excited about adding some of the other grade levels as well. All right, we're going to dig into menu, and this is a little bit of a bigger chunk. I think that our online platform, All Learners Online, has really grown out of menu. So menu, again, is this time that we are addressing the specific needs of all of our learners in their just right instruction. That's challenging. There's that tension there, right? We just talked about the importance of wanting all kids to access grade level learning. We also know that kids need more than that, right? We have students who need more practice on skills from earlier grade levels. That's just true. And sometimes that's a really big tension. So that's why menu is such a critical part of our balanced math block, because it builds in time for us to differentiate by readiness. So we're going to take a look at what that looks like, and then we're going to look at the math menu library. So during math menu, students are working independently on practice that is just right for their skill level. There's always some amount of student choice that's involved in menu. Teachers do this in many different ways. Some teachers use a paper menu, some teachers use a digital menu, but students have a variety of things that they are going to be working on that they can access at their own independent level. They're learning through problem solving and game playing. This is a great time for them to revisit and reinforce skills that they've learned already. And during this time, this is really a critical time that teachers are then freed up to work in small groups and focus on what students need, maybe pushing them from that independent level in their instructional level. So again, sorry, everyone works towards grade level targets during main lesson, but everyone works towards their own goals during math menu. And again, if you have a huge classroom of students, it doesn't mean every single student is getting their own exact customized menu. You might have a couple different groups, and we'll look at what that might look like in a minute. But there is a way that everyone is getting what they're needing. One of our facilitators, Erin Oliver, talks a lot about math menu being this same but different time, kind of like that task we were looking at earlier. There's a sense that everyone is working on the same types of things, but also that everyone is doing something different and getting what they need. So we'll look a little bit about what that independent practice looks like. So our math menu library is structured out of the components that we recommend that students engage in during that independent work time during menu. So there's window panes. Window pane is a time for computational fluency practice, spiral review, and then we have problem solvers, which are word problems, and they are at their independent level. So they might be a little bit less grapply than the problems that you worked on in main lesson. We still want them to be engaging and rich. We still want them to have elements of that low floor, high ceiling feeling, but we do want them to be able to be accessed more independently than the problems that you might use in your main lesson. During menu, we always want kids to be playing games, not just as dessert, not just if you finish everything else on your checklist, then you get to play the game, but games are just an equal part with all these other pieces, because games are a really powerful tool for learning math. And we also have journal prompts, which is a time that students can write about and reflect about different areas of math. So our library is filled with different resources in each of these components across grades K through 8. And they are designed so that you can mix and match them based on student needs. So you might be a first grade teacher, but you might pull menu materials from across lots of different grade levels, because the materials themselves don't have any grade level markings on them, although they are identified that way on the teacher side so that you know what skills they target. But again, we want students to have that sense. We're all working on window panes. We're all working on problem solvers. But I also know that I'm working on something that fits me. They're all designed to have some elements of student choice. So for example, our journal prompts have 2 different options that students can choose. There's lots of different games, so students might have a variety of games that they choose from, and we'll look a little bit closer into each of these components next. Our menu materials are primarily focused on the high leverage concepts. One thing I didn't say before is that during main lesson, you're going to be teaching things not just within the high leverage concepts. The high leverage concepts are where we focus most of our time, but of course, during your main lesson teaching, you have a lot of different grade level standards you need to cover. During math menu is a great time to really hone in on that, what matters most, really having students focusing on that progression of the high leverage concepts. All right, so let's look at what this might look like. So you might have 3 different groups in your class that have some different learning targets for menu time. So you might have one group that's working on a learning target that comes from within the first grade high leverage concept. I can count objects within 50 using groups of 10. And then you might have another group who is working on decomposing 2-digit numbers into place value parts. That's within the second grade high leverage concept. And then you might have a third group that is working on repeated addition or skip counting to find the total of equal groups, which comes from within the third grade high leverage concept. And because it's menu, each of these groups, this is the time where they can work on that need. So in the classroom setting, ideally, each of these groups gets a set of customized menu materials. This is a great time to collaborate with interventionists or special educators who are available during this time, because they can help share the load of designing these different materials for groups, and they might know what the students that they're working with could benefit from as well. So I mentioned window panes, which is we're looking at on this screen. So window panes include spaced computational practice for spiral review, mostly focused on the high leverage concepts. And in our library, we have just tagged them by time of year and grade level because they do include that spiral review so that it might have a variety of content. So for these 3 groups, I would be thinking, okay, if group 1 is working within the grade 1 HLC, then I'm going to pull a window pane from grade 1 middle of year. So each of these 3 groups would have their own window pane to work on. They all look similar. So students aren't going to feel like, oh, I'm working, let's say this is a 3rd grade class. Notice I didn't even say what grade level this class is, because this is just a time that these are the targets that the kids have. Let's say this is a 3rd grade class. We don't want that group 1 to feel like, okay, I'm working on some sort of baby looking material for the 1st graders. These window panes, they all look similar and just different content, that same but different feel. Let's look at what problem solvers might look like for these 3 different groups. Same 3 groups that we looked at in the slide before. And for group 1, I might use the search term 10 frame to pull up some problem solvers for their menu choices that use a 10 frame model, because I want them to really start organizing their thinking within groups of 10. For that group 2, I might type in place value within 100 and pull up a problem solver that's focused around that. And for group 3, I could search repeated addition. So I can use the language from my targets to help quickly find differentiated resources for my students. And again, this one was handy that I was able to find tasks that were all related to school supplies. We're really working on creating common contexts across our menu materials so that you can also have this theme feeling. Okay, we might not all be doing the same math problem, but we're all talking about soccer. And that can help later on in your closure conversations, and just in general having that same part, that same but different part, that can help add to this feeling of same. We're all working on school supply problems this week. Games. Can you tell I love math games? Games are my favorite thing. Again, when you're creating menus for these 3 different groups, not every single piece needs to be completely different. And that's something really important to think as you're thinking about how to differentiate materials. So you might have one game that just has different operations or different magnitudes of numbers. And games can be really easy to differentiate in that way. And sometimes they can even be, students can do some self-differentiation by choosing which game board they play with or something like that. And you can have part of the differentiation be student-led and choice. The games in our menu library are organized in these student-friendly flow maps. So again, obviously how student-friendly they are depends a little bit on the reading level of your students, but we've tried to provide visuals and lay them out in a way that makes the directions really easy to follow, both for teachers and for students, so that they know, okay, here are the materials that I need to get set up, here are the steps to play, and then there's also different scaffolds, extensions, and variations at the bottom. I'm just pausing because I see a couple of questions in the chat. How many items such as window panes or games are available at each grade level? That's a great question that I'm not going to give you a specific answer. It really depends on a couple things. The first thing it depends on is where you are at in implementing math menu in your classroom. You're not going to walk into your math classroom tomorrow if you've never used menu and suddenly have, 4 different versions of every part of menu going on perfectly organized. It's complicated. It takes a little bit of time to roll out. And we have workshops and courses that help you learn how to roll out your math menu practice in a way that helps you with that. The other thing it obviously depends on are the needs of your students. So you can use different formative assessments or exit tickets or, information that you're getting if you have screeners or unit assessments to help look at what your students are needing and make groups like that. Ashley, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I would say for a grade level, you might have 3 or 4 different groups of menu materials going on, but it really just depends on what your students are needing. And it also can depend on the different supports that you have. So if you have interventionists and special educators who are able to collaborate with you and be in your room during math menu, that can greatly expand your ability to customize materials for students. Hopefully that helps. I know it's not the specific answer, like, all right, you need 2 of this and 3 of this. For games, one other piece of that I'll mention is that for something like a window pane, that might be something that you change out every week if you're noticing that students are able to finish them every week. Games, you don't have to change out every single week. Games are really powerful to play over and over and over again. You might add in a new game every couple weeks and then maybe recycle a game out every few weeks, but the components also don't need to change at the same rate. And if it seems like I'm like zooming through this really big piece of the math block, again, that we have whole 3 credit courses on how to develop math menu in your class. It's something that takes time. And part of what I'm sharing with you right now is that we've created this online platform where you can get some resources to make it a little bit easier. At the end of this, I'm going to share some access to some of these resources with you so that you can sample some of them. The full access is a membership, an annual membership that you can sign up for. But at the end of this, I will send you a link where you can sample some of the materials for free of all the different components that I'm talking about today. Anything else that I missed in here?
I think I've kept up with it.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. I just wanted to make sure I addressed that one about menu because I know it's sort of a big one.
The biggest one, I think I just want to clarify, maybe so I'm not typing all this over and over again, is our HLC suite, I like to call it, includes our high leverage concept maps, the progressions documents, and the high leverage assessments. If you didn't get to join me in last week's session, you're going to get the recording at the end of this conference with every session. So like even right now, TJ is doing another session. You'll get that one because you obviously can't be in 2 places at once. So you're going to get recordings for everything. So if you're feeling like I need more information about these high leverage concepts, you can go back and watch that recording. And I've been linking them in the chat so you can pull up those resources. And if you have an email, please just, or a question, email me and I'll answer it in an email. You don't have to wait until March 6th if you're curious about something. But those resources are all available for free and will remain that way for teachers to access. The online platform is a membership platform that you could either join by yourself, you could use your PD money to pay for your own membership. Typically, the district buys, it's not like a site license, but they buy several seats for teachers or special educators or whoever's going to be using these materials. And all of these resources that Katie is sharing with you are already connected to those high leverage concepts. So if you're a third grade teacher, like I was for a long time, and you're working with an intervention group on the second grade HLC, which is adding and subtracting within 1,000, I know that I can type in add and subtract within 1,000 or grade 2 and pull in all those resources to use in my intervention group or to use to supplement my menu. Same thing, I can type in third grade or multiplication games and get resources. So it's almost like a library of the things that you're going to use to support your second and third layers of instruction beyond your tier 1. So that's kind of how those two those two resources are different. I'm not sure if that was helpful or more confusing. Sorry, Kate.
No, thank you so much for providing that context. That yes, and again, I will share right at the end of today. We'll have a little bit of time where you'll be able to explore some like a sampling of the resources as well for free that are included in the paid membership. All right, and okay. So let's continue on to look at the last part of the independent practice in Math Menu. So journal prompts. So again, we've got our 3 groups with different learning targets, but maybe I just wanted a journal prompt that was unifying everyone. Maybe everyone could use some growth mindset reflection, and you might choose one journal prompt document that fits all of your students' goals for that week. We also have some journal prompts that are connected, that are a little bit more like math based. There might be a would you rather prompt or something like that in a journal prompt. Sometimes journal prompts can be a great way to just collect how your students are feeling about themselves as mathematicians, how they're experiencing math in your classroom. Don't discount the power of getting that feedback from your students through this way to see what's going on for them. So you could type in growth mindset into our library and pull up a prompt that's more like that, or you might choose something else. The key is that journal prompts allow students to have some time for synthesis and reflection. They can keep a math journal where they write their responses. I've seen teachers do it lots of different ways, where they have a notebook where they just answer the journal prompts, or they write it directly on the paper. Again, the beauty of Math Menu is that you can customize how you use these components and how you present them to your students in a way that fits your style and the needs of your students. This is just what we kind of call the boilerplate of what we usually include. And again, while students are working on these components, that frees up the teacher and the interventionists and the special educators, if you're lucky enough to have all of their schedules coordinated and all of them around at the same Math Menu block, to work with small groups of students. Okay, so in our math lessons, closure is usually our time for formative assessment, for discussion, for reflection, and synthesis of their learning. Right now in this session, we're going to take a moment and just think about what's next and what will help you grow as a math educator, and look at a couple other aspects of our online platform. Before digging into that, I just want to acknowledge something I said at the beginning about this like feeling of compounding factors that are going on for everybody. I know this is not even close to a comprehensive list of what's on your plate and what the different decision-making factors that you have to grapple with every day. This is just what I could barely fit on the slide. There's so much coming at you as teachers, and even more right now. This is real. The decision fatigue is real. And I know I've been out of the classroom for a year, but I was a teacher for 10 years before that. And it can make you feel powerless sometimes when you're like, okay, great, I want to make this decision in my classroom, but then I have all these other things. We hear you and acknowledge that as something that's very real. I don't want to just like skim over that, and I want to acknowledge what's all these things that are going on. At All Learners Network, we just really believe in the professionals that we work with. We can't change the entirety of the educational system, although we're always striving to. And All Learners Network actually is very engaged at making change at a systems level. But we really do believe that you are a professional and that you are an expert on your own students, and that you can make really great decisions about what your students need. And also, this was actually really huge for me when I first started working with All Learners Network, that you can grow in your math identity and understanding in order to enrich your math instruction. I, as a teacher, maybe felt a little bit more confident about the first part, but when I was a teacher, I was not so confident on myself as a math person. And that's been a journey that has changed for me through working with math coaches and working with All Learners Network. And that is a big part of our online platform, is to support you in your decision making and to help you cut through the decision fatigue and make it easier for you to get what you need and use it in your own professional capacity and expertise, so that you can adapt and create and sequence and craft learning for your students, but not have to go to 1,000 different websites to pull things, or understand, okay, I do have this part for my math program that's going to work for me, and I need these 3 other things to meet the needs of my students this week. So that's really an important goal of ours, is to always honor the professionals that teachers are and lift you up from there. So some other resources that we have within our online platform are courses. So I think someone asked about this, and I'm sure Ashley responded. We have virtual and in-person classes as part of All Learners Network. In our online platform, ALO, we have asynchronous and self-paced courses. So these are courses that you log in, you take on your own time. You can sit for 15 minutes at a time. They're broken up into small chunks with little videos and interactive activities in between to help you learn all different aspects of many of the things I just talked about today, but we have versions of our in-person courses in our platform. So we have a foundations course that helps you get the basics, that's followed by an application course that helps you apply some of those basics in your classroom. And then we have focus courses that go into specific things. So for example, we just released a launch and number sense routines 3-hour course that you can take if you're interested in rolling that out in your classroom. Again, we know overwhelmed, busy, there's a lot going on. If what feels right for you is to get a little bit of learning, sometimes that can feel energizing. We wanted to create a pathway for you to do that on your own time. We also have a community space where we have community discussion groups by grade level or by different parts of the math block. So we have like a math menu group or a launch group where teachers can come and share. Recently, a teacher posted in one saying that they were, without obviously any identifying information, that they were struggling with a student in their intervention block and needed some advice on other types of models. And one of the ALN facilitators was able to chime in and one of the other participants. So it's just a place where you can connect with people outside of your school building, which can be really helpful. I know when I was a math interventionist, for example, I was the only one in my building. And so sometimes being able to reach out to a broader network, all learners network, that's, something that we really want to support teachers in. And then we also have live connection meetings where we do have a synchronous time where people can get together. So I just wanted to mention those pieces at the end as part of the package that you get if you are part of our online community, or our All Learners Online membership. But for right now, I want you to take a minute and think about what is next for you. And after we do this reflection, I'm going to share the resources that I mentioned and give you a minute to explore them. But for right now, just take a moment and think about what would your next step be for growing as a math teacher. It doesn't have to be specific to the balanced math block structure I just talked about today, or something else that you've learned about in this conference so far, although if that's what's on your mind, please share. But just take a moment and think about what's the next step for you in growing as a math teacher. Because again, we are always encouraging you to reach for that next growth that feels right for you. But also, what do you need to grow and support your students? What do you need? What kind of support would make it possible for you to take that next step? We might not be able to offer it. We can't make all the changes that would make that possible, but it can just be helpful to reflect on. So take a moment and think about that for yourself and share that in the chat. Some of the things I see in the chat are enrichment, extending learning more about the math block, teacher workstation during menu, digging into the high leverage concept documents. Great. Taking some of these courses, learning how to write meaningful IEP goals. I'm assuming there was some conversation up higher above about that course that we're really excited to release soon. Understanding progressions. Great. Thank you for those reflections. These are all really great. And I hope as you think about what you need to get those things, that if there's any parts that All Learners Network can support, that we can do that. So as we come to a close, and I know I want to give you a moment to open this before your next session, I'm going to drop in the chat so if you just copy that bottom part of that link, there's also a QR code if that's your jam on the screen there. And this will open a PDF that will give you access to a couple things. So this first part here where it says visit the resource library, I just want to clarify, since this came up earlier, you'll click on that and you will access the high leverage concept maps, learning progressions, and assessments. We do house those within All Learners Online, which is our online platform, but those are also available and will continue to be available for free on our website. So we have them on our platform, so it's easy for our members to access, but that's not exclusive to our membership. I just wanted to put them on here because I had a feeling people would want to be able to look at them quickly. What's also on there that I did not talk about today, but you might have heard about if you attended our other sessions, are learning progressions that go along with the high leverage concept maps that unpack how those high leverage concepts progress typically for students across each grade level, as well as our high leverage assessments, which provide formative assessment to help you understand what students understand about the high leverage concepts. So you'll find all of that in that resource library. You can also visit a preview version of our launch library. You'll see that some of the items are restricted, but there are a couple that you can download. It just gives you a chance to try out the search features, and you can download some of the samples. Same thing for the menu library. The main lesson task library, since it's still in pilot form, we don't have a library preview yet, but there's a couple tasks for you to look at there. And then we've also provided a math menu problem solver at every grade level just for you for coming to this session. So I wanted to make sure everyone had something they could take away from coming to this session at a grade level that was relevant to them. So hopefully that will help you explore those resources a little bit. And there's also a link if you're interested in becoming a member, you can click there. I know that we'll send more information out about that at the end of the conference as well. And that is it for me. And I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for all of you for coming. We're so excited to be sharing this conference with all of you. And please share if you have any other questions. You're welcome to share them in the chat, or even you're welcome to unmic and ask.